Case 623 by Danny Yu. Chapter 58.
How many times in our lives have I needed you to save me?
He asks. 3, he thinks. It might be more. His memories aren't all there just yet.
I couldn't fail you again,
the man behind the bar says.
I didn't need saving,
he says, and he thinks maybe his heart ought to be breaking at the sight of those bars, the beard and unkempt appearance, the desperation in those blue eyes staring at him. But he doesn't feel that way, not more than he would for most acquaintances. There's still a disconnect between now and then, before and after, and this isn't the boy who once needed to be saved on a daily basis. Tony stuffed his hands into the pockets of his slacks and tried to keep calm. Ostensibly, the business suit was to project his confidence that he really was allowed to be here, even though he suspected Ross was already in the process of barring his access. If he were completely honest with himself, though, Tony could admit that the suit, more than anything, was there to make him feel safer. It didn't make much sense to himself, really. He was always far more comfortable in worn soft jeans and band shirts, but somehow the suits made him feel safer, like they were a different kind of armor he could put on to protect himself. They definitely made it easier to prevent other people from seeing through his skin and into the soft bits inside. Now, faced once again with that cell, he wasn't sure why he'd felt the need to protect himself at all. Barnes, if possible, was curled even smaller than last time. He nearly disappeared into the shadowy corner in a way that completely defied his size. In that moment, Tony had no doubt that Barnes was far more scared of everything, Tony probably included right now, than Tony could ever been of him. And Tony was still more than a bit uneasy being this close to Barnes. Maybe he always would be. Still, right now he couldn't help but feel a sliver of sympathy for that hunched shape on the floor. "Barnes," he greeted. Barnes gave the barest twitch, which Tony took as if not a return greeting, at least an acknowledgement. Tony sighed. "Listen, I'm not here to kill you or do anything remotely terrible. We talked before, didn't we? Did you forget how to speak?" And okay, maybe he could be kinder, but when Tony did kindness with people who weren't family, he often came off as condescending without even meaning to, and he was pretty sure that wouldn't help the situation any. Besides, no one appreciated being spoken to like they were children included, and Barnes, damaged though he was not a child anyway. "Stark," Barnes finally croaked out. Tony leaned his shoulder against the wall behind. "Okay, you're responsive. That's good. That's something. So, listen, I'm going to speak kind of quickly now because I'm going to say some things the guys running this place won't want me to, and in a few minutes I might very well be politely escorted out of here. So can you at least hear me out?" The barest of nods, and Tony could barely convince himself he hadn't imagined it. Still, it was going to have to do. "Okay," Tony said. "So, super quick rundown here. American Secretary of State is a powerful guy who only likes the enhanced when he could control them. So, of course, he was put in charge of everything to do with metahumans and the enhanced. Right now, he controls this prison, the guards, and your whole life. He also has your nifty little red book, and you, because of your known activities over the past few decades, combined with the fact that he could control you, and will have a hard time proving it, are more at risk of being made his personal attack dog than anyone else. With me so far." At some point during that spiel, Barnes raised his head just enough that his eyes, steely orbs of pure fear, were visible above his folded arms and knees, peeking out through his ready air. Tony took a deep breath. "Now that happening is not in anyone's best interest, I'm pretty sure, so I'm here with a special offer. I have a document that puts you under the temporary protection of the Sokovia Accords for a week, while you read through the Accords. That removes you from Secretary Ross's control completely. If you sign the temporary agreement, I have permission to take you immediately into my custody and move you to another secure location, since this place isn't under the Accords yet. From there, we'll be able to start working on those triggers in your head. Do you understand?" Barnes just kept staring at him. "Do you understand?" Tony repeated.
"Maybe I deserve it,"
Barnes finally said, voice still just as rough as it had been last time Tony was here.
"After everything, maybe I don't deserve freedom."
"Who cares what the hell you deserve?" Tony asked, a slow-moving rage already beginning to heat the pit of his stomach. "What I do know is that any of the people you'd be made to attack would deserve it not at all." "The gods are moving toward your current position, boss," Friday said in Tony's earpiece. "Now or never, Barnes," Tony said. "If you don't get yourself out of here right now, it's game over." Barnes glanced to the side, and Tony was pretty sure he heard the approaching footfalls several long moments before Tony himself. Finally, he looked up at Tony again, and the barest hints of determination made his eyes look ever so slightly alive.
"Give it here,"
he said at last. Tony reached into his inner pocket, pulled out a tablet and stylus, and handed them over. Barnes looked dumbfounded for a moment. Then he got over himself and sighed, "Thank fuck!" And Tony had his best work ready when Rouse's goons showed up half a moment later. Quite frankly, Tony was grateful Vision had come with him, even if he had waited outside. Vision was perfect, power-wise, to contain the Winter Soldier and take him to the compound and the Hulk panic room there. He was really glad to be able to go home and strip out of his toothpaste, eat Bruce's dinner, and build a Lego Millennium Falcon with Maria, Jamie, and Peter. Still, the sight of the Bucky bear, still exiled to a lonely shelf, got to him in a way he couldn't quite explain. He barely finished reading tonight's chapter of The Deathly Hallows when Peter stuck his head in and told him Pepper was here, and oh gods, Pepper was not to be underestimated, but that was Jocasta's job, and if Peter was so easily distracted from doing homework with Bruce Banner, Tony would have to have a word with Howard Morita about how that school was run. He pressed a quick kiss to Maria's cheek before lifting Jamie up on his hip, barely suppressing a grunt. Even Jamie was getting too heavy to lift, so damn it all. And taking him to his own room where he smoothed the kid's hair back and kissed his forehead. "Sleep well, kiddo. Gotta go see what your aunt wants now, okay?" Jamie flashed him a wide smile, and Tony took that as permission enough. Another grin, and then he went for the door, turning off the lights and turning on the arc reactor-inspired nightlight Jamie had yet to give up as he went. He passed Peter and Bruce discussing something to do with Peter's world politics class, and props to the kid for taking that. He gave a quick wave before heading on to his rarely used home office. He stopped to kiss Pepper's cheek before rounding the desk and plopping down into his chair. "What's up?" "Rogers managed to snag himself some ambitious little asshole pro bono lawyer who's trying to pin the blame for everything on anyone other than Rogers," Pepper said. "We need to work out what exactly our answers to their accusations are going to be." Tony winced. "I guess he'll have plenty of patriots on his side," he said. "Nationalists, Tony," Pepper said. "They're called nationalists, and many of them are on our side anyway. We're good with the economy. Anyway, I sent the press release to your tablet. There are a few points we definitely need to work out, and then we'll start arranging interviews." "Okay," Tony said, picking up his tablet and opening the new file. "Where do you want to begin?" "Let's start with the most incendiary point," Pepper said, looking at him with those sharp blue eyes of hers. "Tony, did you, Rhodey, and Vision bomb a missile silo in Siberia knowing there were people inside?" "Yes," Tony said. He didn't say that Bruce had supervised. Bruce was always just on the line between loved and hated by the public because of the Hulk and people's misconceptions and all that. He had less leeway than the rest of them. The further Tony could keep him out of all this, the better. There were 5 psychotic Hydra super soldiers inside. I'll send you the files, but they were dangerous. We knew what we were doing might not be wrong, but it sure wasn't right either. With a swipe of his thumb, the files beeped their way into Pepper's trackpad. Pepper took a few minutes to scan the files before nodding. "As there was not yet a global system in place to deal with these types of uncontainable threats, you did the only thing you could think of to keep the world safe. Now that the Accords have been ratified, you hope and pray to never find yourself in a situation where you have to make that kind of call again," she said. Tony nodded. "Not even a lie, that," he said. "And why didn't you inform Captain America?" Pepper asked. The angle of her cocked eyebrow suggested that she didn't think much of Captain America. The answer was still important, though. Unlike certain other people, Tony was never going to underestimate PR. "Captain America was compromised," Tony said. "He knew about the nature of my parents' death for 2 years and didn't tell me, to protect his war buddy. He recruited Wanda Maximoff on shaky grounds, though that hasn't turned out too badly. Wanda needs more training, but she could be an asset. Either way, it was to make the way for his old war buddy and make it harder for us to reject him. Captain America killed people in Budapest to protect his old war buddy. Like I said, severely compromised. We could not trust him to have a clear head when it came to Hydra super soldiers." Pepper flashed him a brief smile and an approving nod. "You knew the Winter Soldier's location for months and didn't inform Captain America," she said. Tony sighed, reached up and raked his fingers through his hair. "Truth be told," he said, "that one was a mistake, and I'm sorry.
If I'd told Rogers or brought Barnes in myself when I found him, none of this would have happened.
He had to stop there, swallow. Pepper reached out, wrapped her long fingers around his hand, and pulled it out of his hair, anchoring it to the table. It was strangely reassuring. Well, you realize in hindsight that you could have made different decisions. You were blinded by your own trauma and simultaneously interested in seeing the Winter Soldier continue to rehabilitate himself, she said. You're sorry things went as wrong as they did, but you cannot take responsibility for Roger's actions, especially given the fact that he didn't create a team environment that encouraged full disclosure.
Tony managed to smile and was kind of surprised by how watery it felt. He gave her hand a quick squeeze. Yeah, he said, that. Thank you.
Pepper returned his squeeze and didn't let go. They also claim that Rogers is ignorant to modern international politics and laws, and that you were the main person responsible for that, she said.
Tony snorted. Why do they claim I was his employer?
There was a glint in her eye. That one is easy, at least, she said. While much of the funding came from SI, the Avengers Initiative was its own self-owning entity led by Steve Rogers. We are no more responsible than donors are when relief aid organizations turn out to be dirty.
Tony gave a sharp nod and straightened his shoulders. The first few years after he awoke, Rogers was with S.H.I.E.L.D., he said. If anyone had a responsibility to bring him up to speed, it was them. When the Avengers became independent, I could recommend reading material and things to catch up on. And I did, the Accords included. Rogers kept insisting that all he needed was his damn list of pop cultural phenomena. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink and all that.
Pepper's smile was sharper now, satisfied, at least for a moment, before they became speculative again. And what do you want to do about Barnes? She asked. Tony let out a breath, straightening his neck.
We are going to be utterly honest and upfront about everything we know he's done. Then we're going to be upfront about everything that was done to him and throw every damn bit of power SI Legal has behind him. The best way to neutralize the Winter Soldier sort of killing him, which I don't believe he deserves, is to give all control back to James Barnes. The world will be the safer for it, and we're the only ones who can make it happen after his old war buddy took him on a killing spree. I'll send you the files on him as well, but I want him to go free.
Pepper cocked the perfectly manicured eyebrow. Are you sure? She asked.
Tony swallowed down the lump of leftover pain and made himself nod. It's for the best, he said.
She kept looking at him imploringly for long moments. When his stance didn't change, she gave a decisive nod. I'll set up the interviews, she said. We're going to slaughter them.
Tony flashed her a grin. Still, even the relief of having Roger's lawyer dealt with wasn't enough to explain the weight that somehow felt lifted off his shoulders. Ah, well, he could always do with less weight to carry around.